I always like to wait till I can see us. And there we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Worldbuilders Weekly. Um, I need to pause my Twitch. Sorry if you heard that that echo,
Pause.
but yeah, we're off to a great
Broadcast
start here.
101.
You all know me. I'm Zay. I'm the assistant director here at World Builders, and thank you for joining us.
And I'm Gray. I'm the executive director for Worldbuilders. And every week we bring you the latest news from our little corner of the world, treasures and special deals from the market, and trivia and nerdy tangents, and lots of geek doing good stories, thanks to your incredible support of us, which we are so grateful for.
And sometimes we're lucky enough to have a special guest. This week, Jackie.
Oh, you froze for a second there, Zay.
Hello. I know. I'm like, of course I'm going to freeze right when you introduce me.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to double check my internet now. But hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Jackie, you are the director of philanthropy. It actually says right on Twitch, so that's good.
Yeah, that's me. I have the great pleasure of working with you guys. I know that y'all show a bunch of World Builders things, and then Zay and Gray and I get to talk about it behind the scene, which is very cool, and I love this part of my work.
Yeah, it's always great to see you too. It is, you sometimes luck out. Sometimes you work with people and you're like, well, I have to work with this person. And sometimes you're like, I really like this person.
Well, I don't know either.
Okay, my internet connection is unstable. Lovely.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's have Zay start the trivia thing, and I'm going to do a quick check on my connectors and stuff.
It does look like it might be Stevens Point, but that's okay. We'll trudge forward. Gray was saying it's just really delightful to work with Jackie in particular, and we super lucked out. But yeah, this week's trivia, last week's trivia, if y'all can hear me, hopefully, was what is the name of the member of the X-Men whose life was saved by a purple dragon? And some of you put in your answers. I'm super excited to reveal the answer of this one. It was, and Jamie, did you? Oh, that'll probably be for the next one. It was Kitty Pryde. Can everyone still hear me? Awesome.
Okay.
So Kitty Pryde was the answer. Congratulations to whoever got that one right. We wanted you to be specific. What's up, Gray?
I have a just one clarification. I mentioned it last week, which is that another fair and accurate answer would be all of the X-Men, because Lockheed, who is one of my favorite characters, saved everybody's asses multiple times, and it's just that particular story arc is really good. So sorry, little X-Men geek here. So it's like,
yeah, but we wanted you guys to give us a specific answer, I believe. Yeah. Gray, did you want to take the new trivia question? Otherwise, I
would love to take the new trivia question. Thank you. So, and actually, this one has a personal thing to me, because among my more useless productivity and security nerd things is that I have studied different versions of typing methodologies. So next week's is, what is the name of the person who invented the layout for the commonly used QWERTY keyboard, as well as the typewriter? Now, if you're wondering what QWERTY means, if you look at the top line of your keyboard, you'll see that it has QWERTY. And that particular lineup, you might think, oh, well, obviously that's designed to be the most efficient way to type because of how often we use words. But no, that is actually not the case. It is not anywhere near the most efficient way. And true story. I'll tell you what, we'll give a bonus question, which is only to the people that are here. You'll get an extra entry if you can also mention in your answer on DM, name one other common keyboard layout. I'll even be more specific. That is named after a musician.
Oh, shoot.
Yep.
Gray
Sorry.
putting down guidelines.
That's
And
right. We will
still
talk more
don't
about
throw
this
those.
next week. We'll
Yeah,
talk more
still
about
don't put those extra answers in the chat. Make sure they make it into the DMs. Not only is it better for everybody, but then we actually get to record who gave us an answer and who can be a winner.
Zoe mentioned, is it because of the keys getting stuck? That, from what I understand, is actually a myth. It was not because the keys were getting stuck. But it is worth it. I know what you're. The idea was that the typists were so fast that the machines of the time couldn't keep up with them, and that they would jam. And I believed that for a long time. Again, I nerded out about this for a while, and it turned out that based on the research I did, that was actually a myth. But it's a fun myth, you know.
That one too.
Because the idea of deliberately making something less efficient, you know, in the workplaces, and then that we still keep it even when it may not actually be useful.
I am a fan of the QWERTY keyboard because the home keys are my initials, J and F.
Oh, well, that's nice.
So that's why I use a QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah.
That
Exclusive reason why Jackie uses it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Zoe says, well, why do they do it? You know what, Zoe, we will make that a topic for next week's World Builders Weekly. We'll start the script right now, and we will put in there, Gray gives a presentation on the history of keyboard layouts.
Oh, Jeannie has
So
typed
remind me to log in
Right,
at 11:15.
Jeannie has typed, making something less efficient is the work of the government. So there's that.
Well, I don't know. I think it's also the work of cats.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Moving on to the actual guest who has joined us. Welcome again, Jackie. We're very excited you're here. Moving forward into the future is what I was about to say, which is the only way to move forward. Hopefully we'll have Heifer on more regularly so we can get some nice updates on programs, and you guys can see what your donation is doing outside of our blog and directly from the people that are benefiting from the donations. So that'll be great.
And Jackie has the dog in the background. You have to introduce the dog.
Kava.
Oh, we have to introduce pets.
Oh, look at the pet.
This is Kava. She is an 8-year-old mess of a pit mix, but I love her.
Hi, Kava.
It's a cute one.
Yeah.
Got the outline of a dingo going on.
Right? Someone stopped me once and like, she looks like a Chicago dingo. I'm in Chicago. And I was like, okay, sure.
No Chicago dingoes.
So don't mind, we have art back here too, my silver men.
It's
I won't go
wonderful.
into it. I'll explain it later. Next
We're
visit.
working a song now, you know, the dingoes of Chicago, they're the baddest pets in town, you know, go on with that. Just take it from there. And going back to the script, so Jackie was instrumental in helping us do the fundraiser this last year, especially since it was the first time that Zay and I and the rest of the team had actually done this project. So huge amount of the success of it goes, you know, into your corner, Jackie, for helping us and shepherding us through that. And I actually came to World Builders last year just in time to get to be the person who signed the big check that we wrote to you. And I'm going to get to be that person again this year, sign the big check. And the question is, once we do that and I put it in the mail to you, what happens? Like, what happens to that money when you get the, does it come to you or does it go to Heifer, or what happens with that?
Well, I don't know. It depends on where you send it. You can send it to me, but then I will just send it to Heifer. So when that time comes, Gray, we'll have a conversation. But you should probably just send it to Heifer because it'll get processed quicker. And once it's processed, it goes to work immediately in projects that are ongoing in the field as we speak. I'd love to talk to y'all about a few of those. And I know some of them you're probably familiar with and some you may not be.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know. Do you have any other questions about the donations processing process? Because I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know as much about
Fine,
that.
fine. That's
Get
just
in the computer. Doot, 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 doot.
and boom, there it goes. Cool.
There it goes.
Well, yeah, I mean, so yeah, I know that last year, World Builders actually did kind of donate to a specific project. It was the Bangladesh project. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to go
That's
ahead and
right.
talk
So
about that?
yeah, that was kind of a cool thing that we tried for the first time, is to kind of fund a full project with the donations from World Builders. It had a budget of during that fiscal year for about $1 million. And I think we raised the majority of that, over 800,000, that went straight to this Bangladesh beef and goat project. The cool thing about that, it's still going. So I hope some of the funds this year go to that project as well. But I wanted to share one kind of cool story is, as everybody knows, COVID has affected everyone. Our global farmers are no exception to that. Because of the donations last year, one of the main things that we were able to do in Bangladesh in this project was really strengthen our cooperative model. The cooperatives are really important in all of our projects, but in Bangladesh specifically, they help gather people together so that they can combine their resources when it comes to things like transportation, marketing, distribution. When you have one truck that kind of collects it from everybody instead of each farmer trying to figure it out on their own, they're much more productive, they make more money. We're also able to train people like community agri-vets. So people who administer vaccines, who help with births, do artificial insemination, they can be resources for the co-op as well. One of the awesome things, one of my most favorite things co-ops do is have village savings and loans. So each person puts in a little bit of money and then they have this big fund and they can loan it out, right? So let's say, Gray, you're like, I want to expand my goat business, but I need to take a loan. Well, this group meets and they see, well, okay, Gray is accepted for this amount of money to buy more goats and build up his herd. You build up your herd, you sell your goats, you're able to pay off your loan. Then somebody else says, I need a new roof on my house. My roof is leaky. I need a better one. We'd make that loan. So it's like this revolving fund that exists within this community to help everybody lift each other up. And during COVID, it was really instrumental. So what they did, the co-op met and found some of the farmers who were most disadvantaged because of COVID. Maybe they had health issues and couldn't get out. Maybe for some reason their goats weren't selling as much as someone else's. They identified the people who were most vulnerable and made loans and donations to those people in particular. So because of these cooperatives that World Builders helped up through their funding, it worked this year to help the most vulnerable farmers in Bangladesh. So that's continuing. That work is still ongoing. We have some really cool stories about that I'll share with y'all too on the blog if people want to read them. But that's one way that your gift is going to continue to work this year as well. I think that's a 5-year project and we're about midway through that.
That is so great to hear. I think communities are always stronger when they kind of focus on the vulnerable instead of this kind of leave them behind and the most successful rise kind of mindset. So that's really nice to hear how that community kind of handled that.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
the fact that we're helping out cooperative stuff now. If we could just get that kind of thing in this country, we'd be really, really working well. That's as much politics as I will put into this particular broadcast. Let's change to one of Zay's favorite topics.
Oh yeah, I would just love to talk about kind of as I've put in our thing here, the symbiotic relationship between Heifer.
I was going for coffee, but okay.
Well, what the fuck? Beyond coffee, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Honduras. I see. We're only focusing on the things Gray wants to focus on. So no, that's fine. Let's still talk about the kind of Nicaragua, Mexico, and Honduras and keep on the projects talking.
Yeah, well, I'll make it short and we'll get to the fun Zay things after. Yeah, but Beyond Coffee is a really cool project. It's pretty new. We started it just a couple years ago and we're really just in the first year of implementation here, but we're working in 3 countries, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Mexico, like you mentioned. And we're working with coffee farmers, which is very important. A, we love coffee, right? B, there is a coffee crisis in this world where you and I are paying $5 for a cup of coffee and the farmers are getting pennies. So what we do is we make sure that we connect these coffee farmers with profitable markets so they're actually getting their fair share of the hard work that they put into it. We're also helping them move further down the value chain. So if they have a raw bean, they may get I really don't know coffee prices, but they get one price. But if they roast the beans, it's a much higher price that they're getting. So how do we help build infrastructure for these farmers to move further down the value chains to get the most profit? Additionally, coffee can be very vulnerable. You only harvest once a season. So another thing we're doing around that is diversification of assets. So we're working with beekeepers. I know WorldBuilders loves honey and bees. So we're working with beekeepers there, poultry farmers, pigs, a lot of other commodities like cardamom and spices, and then other cool, fun things like bananas and passion fruit. So we're really helping these farmers diversify their produce and their income so they have more sustainable income as they go. Another big thing in this area is climate resilience. There's a lot of flooding and a lot of drought in Central America. So we make sure that they have climate smart agriculture and mitigation practices so that they can have profitable harvests every year.
Fantastic.
So that's another project. I hope that this, and that project only has, I think, a budget of like 200 or 300,000 this year since it's early on. So we could like fund that with WorldBuilders money, just a portion of the money that WorldBuilders raised.
Am I right in thinking that the coffee that we had at our mid-season fundraiser as a prize was from this project?
So it was from a similar project, because this one's still kind of new, but that one came from a very similar project in Guatemala. We kind of borrow lessons learned from all of our coffee projects, but that was a project in Guatemala that we did with coffee farmers.
Cool.
Maybe next year we can get this coffee though. I'll see what we can do.
Absolutely.
That'd be cool.
There was one other project we were going to talk about. I feel like I'm stealing from you, Gray.
No, go for it.
Is Heifer USA and regenerative agriculture. Jackie, if you could expand on that.
Yeah, farmers in the US need help too. We think that the family farms are the way towards the future. So Heifer USA serves multiple purposes. One is to, again, with the cooperative, set up cooperative models so that small family farms can be profitable. B, we do a lot of learning and education around that as well, bringing farmers to Heifer to learn. We also do virtual trainings. And C, it's kind of acting, did I just say A, 2, and C? I think I did. You know what I mean?
A2 and gamma, that works great.
Yes. But we're kind of serving as like a research lab. So our farm is doing a lot of best practices. And one of those is around regenerative agriculture. And I think we have a graphic that shows some of this. And please forgive me if I don't touch on everything in this graphic, because I am just seeing this for the first time. We're not even publishing this yet. So WorldBuilders exclusive access. But regenerative agriculture really is around the mindset of making sure that we return to the land the things that belong to the land. We can reverse climate change through regenerative agriculture. If we are smart with the biodiversity, especially in our soil, we can actually sequester carbon from the atmosphere. So this type of farming practice can save our planet. If we could all, everybody who farms uses regenerative agriculture, it would reverse the effects of climate change, which is just amazing. So these are things like crop covering, making sure that you don't till. Let's see, what else is on this list? Raising pigs in forested areas because they're healthier and they help. They talk a lot about how there's a lot of pushback sometimes on the beef and pig industry about ruining our land. But actually, if you have the right amount of animals in the right area, it's good for the land. It's kind of like a natural till. Without pulling out the soil, they're actually turning that soil just the way that it needs to be, tilled. You eat they're eating the right things, so new things are growing, making sure that we don't use chemicals, things like that. So this is a huge undertaking at Heifer USA that we're practicing on our farm, and we're also helping train farmers around the world so that they can use these practices as well.
Nice.
Sorry if I stumbled over a lot of that too. I am not an expert at this at
I think
all.
you broke that down in a very digestible way for people kind of viewing this super information chocked graphic.
Yeah.
One of our audience asked, sorry, Gray.
Oh, go ahead. You're about to go out.
They said $1 million is a lot of money. but how does that affect Heifer? So I guess, what is $1 million when you guys kind of take that in? What does that mean for you? You know, you said that could fund an entire project. And I guess I'll just let you answer that.
Yeah, $1 million is a ton of money. Like I said, the Beyond Coffee Project has a budget just this fiscal year, I think, of less than 300,000. So really $1 million, it depends on how you look at it, right? $1 million could help multiple projects in very significant ways. Last year, what we did with the Bangladesh project is funded almost an entire budget for a fiscal year for a country program. And that program in particular is impacting 34,000 families. So that's huge. $1 million impacting 34,000 families, and we have an average household size of 5. So we're talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands of people who are moving on a path from vulnerability to a sustainable, dignified life because of this funding that we would not have otherwise. So that is gargantuan.
And I want to dwell for a second on sustainable, because I think that, you know, the projects that Heifer puts in place are so important to WorldBuilders, because you guys really focus on giving communities the resources that they can use to continually create change, you know, empowering women, making farming that is sustainable both for their community, their fiscal needs, as well as the earth. So, you know, it's like we talk about a project that gets funded right here in the now, but also creates change way into the future. And I think that's a really important part of the way Heifer handles things, that often, you know, this similar types of charities don't really focus on providing resources that are then sustainable well into the future. So, yeah.
I agree. Well, quick short story. I was in Rwanda last summer in the before times and met a farmer who the Heifer project that he was involved in had ended 10 years ago. And he took us to the cooperative that Heifer started and talked about how the membership had grown, the practices that they're instilling there, that kids in a nearby school were now getting healthy, nutritious meals that they weren't before. The cooperative was right there in the neighborhood. And he's actually even still could say like the 12 cornerstones that Heifer does, which are, I'm not going to name them all, but things like accountability and sharing and caring, things that make sure that the communities move together. He could still recite them. 10 years later, they were still important to the cooperative there. So yeah, it's definitely sustainable.
That's wonderful.
That's fantastic. So I know Zay likes to get questions from the audience and talk about stuff like that, but I'd like to talk about the symbiotic relationship that Heifer and WorldBuilders has, because, you know, you could almost say that WorldBuilders is weird in that we are kind of
just stealing on my lines.
Passthrough, a pass-through organization, and you mentioned in our earlier conversation that, because we were like, you know, we're sure you have lots of people like WorldBuilders to deal with, and you're like, nope, you're pretty much unique in what you do. And, you know, aside from the amazing competence of the management staff, what else is it that makes us unique as a thing?
It's also the humor of the management staff. It's the, so we always promote on Heifer's webpage and other things that teams get together and do fundraising for Heifer, right? And we have a number of teams. No way do we have anything on the scale of WorldBuilders. Getting a community of this size to come together for a common goal. Not only that, but also everything that goes around it. The education that we get to give back to y'all, which I think is so fun right now and during the 2-week fundraiser, that we don't really get with a lot of our donors sometimes, right? Like if you made a $30 gift to Heifer, I wouldn't give you a call or a live stream and tell you what you're doing, because it's impossible for me to do that for everyone. But I love that about the WorldBuilders community, is not just that you give, but I hope we give back too in terms of education and impact updates and things like that, so you know where your money is going. But yeah, it's very unique to have such an awesome community who's so invested in our work and interested in our work. And there's one thing I love, which we talked about earlier, is communities helping other communities. The chances of people at WorldBuilders meeting any of these Heifer farmers are very slim. And the fact that you're here supporting them and lifting up, you're smart, hardworking, responsible people, and there are people on the other side of the world, communities who are just like that, who just need some resources that they don't have access to. And so you're over here lifting them up because you're giving them the access to those resources and that training. And I think there's something really cool about communities supporting communities. You feel a little bit more supported when you know there's a whole gaggle of y'all behind them. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm kind of always on a mission to help people understand nonprofits just in general, how they work, what does transparency mean, what does their dollar mean, and there's kind of sometimes we get these questions of, well, Worldbuilders is a pass-through charity. Why would I donate to Worldbuilders when I can just donate directly to Heifer? And the answer to that Gray and I always give is, if you want to donate directly to Heifer, you should. You absolutely should. You should become a recurring donor if you want to. Mm-hmm. Of course, your dollar will affect them directly. The end of year is when your 100% of your donation goes directly to Heifer. We'll always do that. We'll always be 100% pass through to the charities that we pass through to. The rest of the year, if you donate to Worldbuilders, so that money goes to Worldbuilders and the things that we do, which in some ways affect Heifer. It might be sending out the prizes that are an incentive for our prize draw. In some ways, the rest of the year, when people put money into Worldbuilders, it's kind of this ongoing relationship that I think is important, where people might not understand, why does a pass-through charity exist? And it's all about, kind of like Jackie said, bringing those communities together and the awareness that it creates. So when you guys all rally together and give $1 million that then goes to Heifer, you're not just giving money that goes to Heifer, you're helping other people in our community create awareness around a cause. And that's something that kind of keeps going. It keeps giving in a lot of different ways. When we're not donating 100% of your donation to Heifer, we have a very similar mission, where maybe you're getting your donation is going to the Okra Project, or maybe it's getting masks out to people who need them through our other initiatives. And so I think that relationship is important. And then if we can keep those people and you guys keep on paying attention, then that end of year comes around again. And I think it's just this kind of relationship, as Gray mentioned, this symbiotic relationship between pass-throughs and the direct impact charities like Heifer is, that kind of keeps our community giving and giving again in a lot of different ways.
Right. You'll also provide us visibility I don't think we would have without you. I know so many people have found Heifer through Worldbuilders. So that's sure, like you said, you can give money to Heifer, that's great. But without Worldbuilders, would you even known about Heifer? So we're very fortunate to have your advocacy. And like you said, also, you never know when one person makes a donation to Worldbuilders, to Heifer, to whoever, and then goes and tells someone else, and then they're thinking about where they want to support. And you can't measure that, right? There's not like a, how did you learn about us, that you can measure over and over. But I know that impact is there as well for both of us.
Yeah.
Can you handle a difficult question? And
can I
frame that by saying, a completely fair answer to this question is, that's not my department. I will ask other people and we'll get back to you. That is completely fair. But Kajal brought up a question, which is just let me start out by saying, love Heifer International. But they have heard that there has been a practice of sending donors' personal information to a third party for cold call donation requests, and that some people have had bad experiences. Now, Kajal hasn't experienced that personally, as just curious if that is, if that is a true practice. I will say, I know that it wouldn't have come through our fundraiser, because we send you the money. We don't send you our list of people. You don't look at that stuff. And we certainly don't sell the information. So it wouldn't have come from any of the Worldbuilder stuff. Do you know anything about that, Jackie? Is there any way you can address that?
I'll touch on what I know is that it's a very common practice among charities. And unfortunately, I don't like it either. But we give any donor the opportunity to opt out of that when you make your donation, whether it's online or in mail or wherever. If you want to opt out and say, do not rent my information, we will 100% honor that. But I know that it's kind. You know why I don't like it? Sometimes I'll have a family member call me and be like, I just got 3 of your catalogs. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. In my system, it only has 1. But then when we use that process, we're duplicating sometimes efforts too. So it's a beneficial process for a lot of charities to find new donors, and it works a lot. But you can always opt out of it with Heifer.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that transparency. So one of the last things that I wanted to talk about, I mean, one of the other reasons to use a pass-through charity is because there's a lot of talk about vetting the right charities and things like that. I mean, especially given some of the, almost veered into political areas. Never mind, I'm going to acknowledge that path and turn away from it. Let's just say there are some things that are set up as charities or fundraising situations that are not quite as ethical or as doing what they represent themselves to do. And so one of the things to benefit from using a pass-through charity is that we will do the vetting for you. In fact, right now, well, not right now, but we're in the process, Zay and Beth are in the process of creating an article about how we go through the process of vetting charities and determining not who's worthy of getting it, but just making sure that the money that is donated, we are sure is going to the intended purpose.
Yeah, I'd like to minor caveat that it is not a direct reflection of the entire process we use, because we're an organization that has more resources than just one individual, but it is an article that helps you guys as an individual use some of our guidelines to choose and vet charities that you like to donate to.
Right, thank you. I stand corrected, literally. The thing that, and this is kind of where I'm going to try and resist the urge to go into a Rothfuss-worthy rant, is the one of the ways that people will often say is, well, how much do you spend towards your administrative costs and overhead? And you know, we at Worldbuilders can say, oh, well, when we do the end of year fundraiser, none. We don't take any money off the top. It just all goes to Heifer, which is nice, but that's not a measure of why we're a good charity. There is a site called the overheadmyth.com that lays out much more comprehensively why using the percentage of overhead is not a good way to do that. And I was a little nervous when we met with Jackie today. I said, how do you feel about the overhead myth thing? Hoping that we were, I know that Zay and I are on the same page on this. But Jackie, do you want to talk about why that's just not a fair way to measure a charity's worthiness?
Yeah, I agree with you. What we think you should be looking at is impact. What return for investment do you get for your dollar? Not how much are the people being paid or how much do you use on fundraising, but what is the impact that's being done through your donation? And making sure that charities are transparent about that you can see data from the field, or in our case, the field, but from the project participants or whoever's benefiting, what's the measurable data that they have that they can share with you, showing that your dollar is doing what we said that your dollar is going to do. And in Heifer, we have, I mean, again, we are also fortunate. We are a large organization and we have a really fantastic monitoring and evaluation team who can make sure that not only are we doing what we're saying we're doing, but we can track that progress. So if things aren't going the way it needs to go, we can adjust in the middle of the project. So we don't get to the end of the project and say, well, that didn't work. You know, we adjust as we go. So that's very fortunate for us. We also have really intelligent, knowledgeable.
What a word.
Intelligent and knowledgeable was what I was trying to combine. Intelligent people who, you know, are worth being compensated for their intelligence, for their work, for their effort. And we're trying to help vulnerable people around the world, but we can't do that without acknowledging the value of our staff as well. So that's something that we make sure that we're compensated. We have vets who work for us around the world. We have doctors who work for us around the world. I mean, our country staff are really fantastic at what they do, where they do it, as well as our headquarters staff. So yeah, I agree with you. Overhead is not something, not to say that you should not consider some of the financials, right? When you're looking at an annual report, financials are something that maybe you should consider, as long as they're not astronomically out of whack. But, holding a charity to a 90% program percentage or something is not feasible. If you want people who are going to do the job, people who are going to stick around, that's also a huge part of success, is not having huge owner returns so people can continue projects. So look at the impact when you're looking at these charities, is what I would say.
And I think that a better way to measure how much overhead is appropriate would be to say, what is the amount of overhead that will give us the greatest impact? Like that way you can say, because the idea there's some arbitrary number that applies across the board for all nonprofit situations is just ridiculous. I mean, there's no such thing as that. And absolutely, there is a measure of, executive pay being overblown that you find a whole lot more in the corporate world. And at Worldbuilders especially, I mean, the purpose of Worldbuilders is to build a better world. And we love the fact that we are able to help out people that are on the other side of the world and get them the resources. But if that comes at the cost of the people in Wapaka, or Eau Claire, or the other W areas and various places, and the other weirdly named
our staff is what Gray's trying to say.
Namely our staff, yeah. If it comes at the expense of their health or their well-being, if we're not paying them a living wage, then to me that feels like it'd be a lot more hypocritical. It's like, oh yes, we want to make a better world for these people to have sustainable stuff, but we're not going to give our people sustainable stuff. So yeah, as Jay Shaden has put in the chat, paying people fair wages is important. And especially since nonprofit work, we are the Don Quixotes of the world. Like we're going to try to end world hunger and poverty and make sure that there's a chicken in every pot for people who want to have chickens, but it's not ever going to be a problem that's solved. It's never going to be, I think so. Burnout is such a huge problem in the nonprofit world. We have a lot of different ways at Worldbuilders where we try to fight burnout, especially in this particular environment. Jackie, do you and or Heifer have particular ways that you keep people from suffering from burnout?
That's a good question. Again, in the before times, anytime I would get burnout, it always seemed to happen right up to when I had a trip to the field coming. And then I go and I meet these amazing farmers. And a lot of times I know we have, chickens or goats or cows on as the picture of Heifer. But to me, when I meet these people, all I can see are their faces. Like I just picture the faces of these people that we're helping. And that gets me out of burnout real quick. But again, we are not in those times. I have not been to the field in over a year. So I don't know. That's a good question. I should probably be more conscious about that. And I don't know if we have anything particular at Heifer. We have meditation on Thursdays, which I always participate in with Rachel Merrill. If she's watching, shout out to her. I love her meditations. We take very seriously vacation time. We have holidays, statutory and flex holidays that you can use when you need to use them. We have all learned to work in this remote world, and we have all been very flexible about that as well. So I don't know. I should personally examine some more of that. We were actually just talking. I didn't take off any time in December because it's so busy that I'm taking some time off later this month, but I could do more. What about y'all? What do you do?
Oh boy.
I don't know. What do we do?
I mean, we definitely start by putting our money where our mouth is, which is kind of a funny pun, what we're talking about. But we really try to make sure that our staff, we really encourage our staff to take breaks. Don't nickel and dime yourself. If you're an hourly worker, there's no need to take a 20-minute break and then dock that off of, the time that you're recording. Those kinds of things. I think Gray also and I take very seriously things like psychological safety and just being accessible to our very small team, and supportive of each other. If there is heavy events happening, we sometimes we'll just say, if we're distracted, I think what I'm really trying to say is we want to listen to people and listen to ourselves. So when there's a heavy event happening, like we had recently in the US here, we were distracted, our staff was distracted, and we said, you know what, guys, we'll support each other, but we're not going to ask anyone anything for the rest of the day. Please take care of yourself. If that means stepping completely away from work and Slack, do it. Those kinds of things. I think just being attentive and empathetic in our workplace and not forcing people to be a certain way. We definitely don't try to exploit toxic positivity here, things like that.
Yeah, another thing that we kind of use to try and make up for things, one of the things that used to happen at Worldbuilders when everybody worked in the same building was that we would have group lunches. Like the company would pay for a lunch that would come in, or we even sometimes had anonymous donors who would treat us to lunch, and we could all as a group get together and do that. That is not the case now, and the easy answer would be to say, well, hey everybody, we will decide that on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock, everyone needs to come and bring their lunch to the Zoom meeting, which then our erstwhile engineer in Seattle says, oh, I guess I'm having an early lunch that day. And, that just doesn't work. We do open up a lunch area once a week. And we say, hey, we're doing a group lunch and we're all going to get together for it. And you can show up. And if you show up, you'll get paid for it. It's, if you're an hourly worker, then you will get paid for that time. But all you'll be expected to do is sit there and chat and eat lunch and talk with things. But at the same time, we also set aside a budget for people to be able to have a meal a week on Worldbuilders. So it's that idea of Worldbuilders taking care of the employees, but on their schedule. And it can be what they do. And, obviously we're not going to go crazy and have, $100 of sushi for lunch. But we will, we want to support in that way. And so it's things like that to try and make sure that we take care of our people, and make sure that, because they're working to take care of people outside, and we want to make sure they're valued as much. So that's an example.
Yeah, it's put the mask on before you put the other person's mask, right? Exactly. Like I know that's overused and common, but it's true. Like you can't really help other people if you don't take care of yourself. I think what you said, Gray, was really important about listening to people. Like one of my least favorite things is mandatory fun. I know it's like good intent. Let's do something fun, but you have to come. I don't know why it always rubs me the wrong way, but it does. And I'm like, I have work to do at this time. Like, I'm so glad that you're going to go have fun, but I would rather either sit in quiet or get some work done. So I think what you said about just listening to people and giving those opportunities, right? Like, here's an opportunity to take time off. Here's an opportunity to be more engaged. Whatever that looks like for that individual is what's best.
Yeah. I think that's really great that you say that, because I just now thought of how as an employee, I'm a person with like anxiety and weird social hangups, and at first it felt like, oh man, how am I supposed to be this like big strong leader if I have all of these weird kind of like social tics, but now I feel like it's a strength to be able to say, but maybe others feel but feel the way I feel, or deal with things the way I deal with them. So I feel like it's more of an opportunity to kind of relate to people and just not create expectations for people, especially that are non-normal or non-normative or in certain ways. But yeah, just if I can dwell really quickly again on something that you guys mentioned, and going back to this kind of overhead myth a little bit. I think when you're researching places, like we've been saying, taking care of your team is super important. Some charities can rely solely on volunteer work. It saves them a ton of administration costs. That's great. A lot of charities absolutely cannot do everything that they do with volunteer work. So taking care of their people, like we've said over and over, is important. And when you guys are doing research, sometimes it's important to see what a living wage or what fair and economic resources look like to those people. Gray and I's pay makes sense where we live. It would not make sense if we lived in New York. You know what I'm saying? So just keep in mind where the charities are based, how they're compensating their people, and what fair looks like in their place of work. You know, $100,000 sounds awesome. It sounds like an awesome yearly wage. In a place like New York, that might be just a barely fair wage. You know, I don't live there, but yeah, just take into account things like that. And as we said, we are releasing a blog post that we hope serves as an article and a guideline for people to help kind of keep things in mind like that as they're searching and vetting charities. So keep an eye out for that, guys.
I'll also say, I feel like Charity Navigator and other places are trying to do better, and they are incorporating new components such as impact and other things, like you're saying, like compensation based on area. So I do think that they hear us, they've read the overhead myth, they understand a little bit better, and I feel like they are going toward making good changes.
Yeah, and it's just you saying that too. It is a little frustrating seeing things like, you know, Charity Navigator from before, who are kind of almost perpetuating these belief systems. I'm glad they're getting better. I think that hopefully information continues to go out there about how charities work. And while they are not charity is not something that is made to be for profit. It's something that isn't designed for profit. It doesn't mean that they can't be profitable, if that makes sense to people.
I mean, this is probably not something to bring up at the very end of a Worldbuilders Weekly to cover in any depth, but another aspect of charities is that charities and nonprofits are band-aids. We are sort of the EMTs of the systemic problems in the world. And as a former EMT, my job was not to fix people. My job was just to keep people alive and get them to the place where they could be fixed. And so, you know, just because we're giving to charity doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working to try and solve the systemic problems that are there. And it's not our job to solve them. It is our job to help move towards them. But it doesn't take away that, and you know, we're all working towards a time when we're obsolete. You know, probably not anytime soon, but it would be nice.
I will add to that, Gray. If anybody is interested in hearing more about what you just said, I really recommend a book called Winners Take All by Anand Giridharadas, I think is his name. It's called Winners Take All, and it's about the roles charity play in creating a better world, but what also should corporations, governments, what role should be playing so that in an ideal world, charities wouldn't even exist, right? It's very interesting. It starts off very doom and gloomy, so give it a few, like as somebody who works in nonprofit, I started reading and I'm like, well, my job is worthless and what I'm doing is never going to solve world's problems, but it gets better as it goes. So I think it goes to say we all have a role to play and we all are responsible. Governments, individuals, corporations, foundations, we're all responsible for playing that role. And we're, as a world, as a society, are not being responsible right now.
Yeah. I think that still ties neatly into the kind of next thing I wanted to talk about. There are a couple points that we could I keep saying dwell on here. I hate when I keep repeating myself, but there are a couple points we could dwell on. But when it does, I think Heifer does a little bit better than just, not a little bit better. I think it does a lot better than just being a Band-Aid. As a direct impact charity, we've been saying this, you guys kind of work to give people the resources that they need, rather than, I'm going to use this term, white saviorism, coming in and acting as if you have all the answers. And this kind of ties in with the way that you represent people, how you think of helping people is I think a better way than, again, to use this term, the white saviorism way. And I'm wondering, Jackie, if you could expand a little bit on that. Again, we had Rose on and she did a wonderful job, but I think it's always worth talking about.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite things I tell people about Heifer, which makes my job difficult, is that everything is so nuanced, right? If you ask me about a specific project in Bihar, India, it's going to be entirely different than a specific project, maybe even working with the same value chain, but it's going to be a totally different way that it's done in Ecuador. And that's one of my favorite things, is the nuances, because when we are in a community, the first thing we do is, when we decide we're going to be somewhere, we hire locally. So from our country directors down to our field technicians, they're from the areas that we serve, so that they know the culture, they know the climate, both literal climate and metaphorical climate. They know those things. And when they go into these communities, they don't say this is what they're doing. The first question they ask is, what do you need to succeed? And it's really community driven. The community, most of the time here in America, in Malawi, wherever you go, most people know what would help them succeed, what they would need to be more sustainable and live a better life. So we ask them, what do you need? And they tell us, and we work with them based on what we know, based on market system gaps, value chain analysis, things like that. What would be profitable for them? Oh, they can handle this. And then sometimes there's weird things like, oh, well, chickens are going to be really helpful. This happened in India. And they're like, oh, but that caste refuses to work with chickens. We've been in Guatemala where they're like, oh, goats are great. And there's a specific Mayan village that we worked in. And they were like, no, goats are not acceptable here. So they tell us what we need. We come back with, what about this? And we go from there. So it's all community driven. I think our field staff are some of the most amazing people, because they are the ones in there building the trust. So a lot of these families that we work with have had organizations or governments come to them and tell them they're going to help, and then they never hear from them again. So building trust is huge, and it's hard in a lot of these rural communities. And our field technicians are just phenomenal with the heart and the knowledge that they put into these relationships in these communities.
Yeah. Thank you. We are reaching the end of our time here. Gray, if you had anything else to add?
I was just going to say, we've been talking about a lot of heavy subjects here and hard things to get through. I think we should subject Jackie to the lightning round of questions.
Oh, that would be great. I have, I would love to start with one. So what is one thing in your space that you think people would be surprised at? And I'm definitely not telling you have to address those metal men in the background. But if you did, I wouldn't be upset.
Okay. So my partner is a lighting designer, and he recently did a lighting installation at the Chicago Botanic Gardens here in Chicago. And he just struck the set, I don't know, like a week ago. And this was part of it. So they have disco balls for heads, and he lit them real cool and had music. Everything else was very like holiday-y. And then you came to his exhibit and it was super rad. But anyway, I told him yesterday, I had them all behind me. I told him I like wanted them as my Zoom background. So these are our disco dudes.
So the entire chat, myself included, I went, lighting designer, because we're all theater geeks and stuff. And so it's like, oh, now we want to talk to him.
Yeah, I'll bring him on next time. He would
have Mr. Jackie Finch on here sometime. That is amazing. So what if I was going to sit down and you can pick out any beverage of choice you want. Well, I said, hey, Jackie, let me get you something to drink. Alcoholic, non-alcoholic, what would be your beverage of choice? And you can pick what time of day it is. You can decide, yeah.
Okay. I'll go seasonal, because in the winter it's an old fashioned, in the summer it's a gin and tonic.
Wow. Wow.
And year round it's a glass of
What kind of old fashioned?
Bourbon, if you have it. I really like some, oh, what's that place? I was about to say that place in Kentucky. That's funny. There, a lot of them in there. Oh, I can't even remember. I just got a very special bottle from there. I went there and was like, what can I not get in Chicago? And they gave it to me.
That's
I don't remember.
a great question. So, yeah. And what's your preferred flavor of gin?
My go-to is Tanqueray. But if I'm somewhere, so I have this one that I got in Alaska. It's a Malga gin. It's really fantastic. It's in Juneau, and they have like Devil's Club in there, which is very specific to Juneau. It's really fantastic. But my day-to-day, like if I'm at a bar, it's Tanqueray.
Sure, cool. We may have to have an after hours or after dark with cocktails with Jackie.
Yeah.
And I'll bring Brian, and he can talk to you about the deals. So
Perfect.
It'll be fun.
Cool. And so, and if I said, hey, we're gonna go out, what kind of takeout would you like us to order in? Like what kind of what's your favorite meal of choice for comfort food?
My favorite food in the world is Indian food. I love a curry. I love some masala. I love Indian food. When I was there, America and Europeans are really the only ones that have like breakfast food. I feel like everywhere else I've been, like their regular food is also for breakfast. So I got Indian food 3 times a day and I was in heaven. I had some great Vietnamese takeout this week though. It was fantastic.
You're so spoiled there in Chicago.
I know.
Not that we don't have good food here at Stevens Point. We have great food out here at Stevens Point. But I know my partner is.
I am spoiled.
Indian food. How about, you already recommended one book, but let's say I'm like, you know what, this is a great book, Jackie, but I need something a little more just entertaining and fun. What's a fun book that you'd recommend I read?
So a book that recently really surprised me at how much I liked it, because I thought it was going to be like very, I don't know. It's called The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I thought it was going to be like, some girly read on the beach, and it was actually really fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. What else? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
One is good.
That's it. Just whatever. There's no wrong answers.
Cool.
And what about the if I say, my Netflix queue is boring, I need to watch something. What's something that you recommend I watch on TV? Or recommend it to Zay, because you've recommended me.
Okay, I love Better Call Saul. What else do I just talk about all the time? I'm only thinking of like recent things. Like I'm watching Bridgerton and I like it, but I wouldn't ever call it like one of my favorite series. I mean, I can watch Schitt's Creek nonstop all the time, never get sick of it. I used to do that with friends. Like if it was on, I would just watch it. And Schitt's Creek is like my new one. And Parks and Rec. My God, I could watch that all day, every day.
Yeah. Same. Parks and Rec and The Office are just easy for me to just throw on. I want to ask this one that Gray asks all the time. I think it might be our last one. If you could have sit down and have a conversation with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose? Anyone
just
in history?
Just one
ever.
person?
Or fictional or non-fictional?
Yeah, or fictional or non-fictional.
No.
Correct. Yeah.
This is way too hard. Usually it's like a party of people.
Okay, pick 3 people,
one?
Jackie.
Okay. That's hard too. I mean, I've already mentioned Terry Gross. She really is just like one of my favorite people in the world, and she's talked to so many people. I could learn from her. Mary Tyler Moore has been like an idol of mine since I was a youngin. When my parents would watch Nick at Night, I was obsessed with Mary Tyler Moore. I don't know who else. This is so hard. I don't know. I'll stop it there, but there's like a million more.
Yeah,
those are also people who were in my life. I feel like I need to go back into history and talk to people there too, but I don't know who those people are yet.
That's great. No, that's always fun. It's just always fun to hear. Like I would have never picked Mary Tyler Moore as being someone that I thought you'd want to talk to. So that's great to know.
I just love her. I love her so much.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, that does bring us to the end.
Oh, that was hard.
Really
I'm like sweating.
Yeah, the lightning round.
Those last two were the hardest questions.
And I'm
going to think about them all day and be like, what dumb answers.
Email us later.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to message Zay the last question, and luckily the telepathy just worked, and she came up with it perfectly. So, yeah. So Jackie, thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you back on, as the year goes on to the next one. But in the meantime, thank you for helping us get through this last fundraiser in such a magnificent way. We really appreciate your help.
Thank you. Thank the World Builders community. This is one of a kind. We are so grateful for your trust, your support, and the incredible work that you make happen around the world. We're incredibly grateful to you.
Thank you. Us too.
Yeah. So we, listeners, as you know, we always want your suggestions, for other guests, creators, authors, gamers, developers, artists, and people in the nonprofit world. I've been trying to find an excuse for us to invite Dr. Devin Price, who wrote the book Laziness Does Not Exist, that I'm loving. So we like to have all kinds of people, but let us know who you'd like us to have or what subjects you'd like us to cover, geeky or otherwise. And you can always let us know through many different ways: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, email, carrier pigeon, smoke signals.
Questions at worldbuilders.org.
Or yeah, there's this thing called email. I hear that is, questions.worldbuilders.
I think it's pronounced email.
Email, yes, email.
Thank you. And as always, if you're looking to support World Builders, worldbuildersmarket.com is a great way to do that. You can get all of the fun, geeky merch and discover new creators.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we already mentioned, our email for questions at worldbuilders.org is also just for other suggestions on the website and things like that. Thank you all for joining us. And next week we will be here at the same time. We don't know who we're going to have on yet, but we will share that with you, and it's tough being a surprise for us too. But don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and please recommend us to other people. We'd love to expand our audience and get to know more people. And then we have our sign off. Anything else, Jackie, Zay, you want to close out with? No? All right. Well, we have our special word that we use for signing off, and we changed it around so that you all can't just predict it. So for this time, the final word is Heifer Moose, my favorite kind of beer. Nice to see you, Imperfect Four. Heifer Moose. Nope, they're not saying it.
There it
we
is.
are. All right. Bye, everybody.